Have you ever looked around and felt like the world's moral ledger was completely upside down? You see individuals cheat, exploit, and tear others down, seemingly without a scratch. You witness malice disguised as ambition and betrayal celebrated as clever strategy. It makes you wonder if true retribution even exists in this chaotic world. We've all been there, watching the wicked flourish. But here's the fundamental truth they all misunderstand. Every morally bankrupt act carries an unavoidable price tag. And sooner or later, that debt is collected, often in ways far more severe than they ever imagined. The people who harmed you truly believed they were exempt from consequence. They were certain their deception would shield them, that their wrongdoing would simply vanish into history. They thought they could shatter your peace and stroll off into a clean future. But reality doesn't forget. And there is a fundamental rule to existence. Life does not allow moral failure to go unpunished. The reckoning is inevitable. Call it the universal debt, and when it arrives, the payment isn't just money or status. It's the silent erosion of their inner quiet, their rest, their reputation. It's their very will to continue. When a person actively chooses cruelty and moral darkness over integrity, the primary casualty is not you, it's themselves. The ruin begins internally. They sacrifice self-trust. They become constantly aware that their true face is hidden. This creates an internal loop of guilt and dread, an inescapable torment. Wherever they go, the ghost of their past choices is right there with them, a constant low-frequency hum of anxiety. You don't plant venom and harvest tranquility. You harvest torment. There is an eternal principle woven into the structure of the cosmos. Every action generates a reaction. It's a fundamental law of existence, something established by God that dictates a necessary balance. You don't need to believe in a specific scripture to recognize this universal truth. Consequence is mandatory. Those who construct their lives upon falsehoods will inevitably see those structures collapse under their own falsity. Those who inflicted suffering will find the mirror of that same agony reflecting back at them. And those who once mocked your tears will eventually find themselves weeping, alone, in silence. The most terrifying penalty is not a strike from the outside. It's what occurs inside their own mind. That is where they pay the true fee. Guilt, shame, and paranoia are powerful, destructive forces. They twist the mind, drain the spirit, and turn even the strongest individual into a shadow of who they once were. You don't need to wish ill upon them. They are already marching toward their own self-destruction, and this is where your focus must be. Your rise. This process is not about vengeance. It is about reality asserting itself. You must not allow their failure to infect your future. Your energy isn't meant for bitterness or wishing them ill. The power of the universe rewards resilience, not resentment. The difficulties they imposed on you are now your forging tools. The painful lessons become your strength, your impenetrable shield. While they are dragged down by the sheer weight of their own corruption, you are climbing with a clarity and purpose they can never regain. People like them mistakenly think they are sovereign when they destroy others. But in truth, they are mere slaves. Slaves to their impulses, their envy, their need to dominate. Life eventually strips that illusion away. You will see it in their face, that haunted look, that restless gaze that avoids the mirror. That's not living. That is punishment. Slow, silent, and relentless. You don't need to wait or scheme for their downfall. It's already in motion. The most profound justice is not an event you witness. It's the peaceful certainty you carry. The finest form of redress is simply outgrowing their chaos and living a life of integrity they forfeited. They will fulfill their debt, not because you demand it, but because that's how life operates. Every lie has an expiration date. Every betrayal comes with a price. Their own mind becomes the prison. Their own choices become the relentless sentence. Walk away from the wreckage. Your victory isn't in their suffering. It's in your renewal. Focus on your own growth because your healing itself is a form of justice. When you rise, it proves that their power over you has expired. And as you rebuild with truth and integrity, their lies collapse under their own weight. You win not by revenge, but by outlasting the chaos they created. What they put into the world always returns, amplified, and in the end, nothing escapes the law of consequence. Here is the continuation of your podcast script, flowing naturally from the previous points and adhering to all your guidelines. At first, the wrongdoer often engages in self-justification. They'll tell themselves they deserved it, or it wasn't that serious, or I had to do what I did. but a hairline fracture appears immediately inside them. And no matter how hard they try to plaster over it, that fracture keeps spreading. This internal split is the true starting point of their long sentence. It doesn't matter how cold or confident they project themselves to be. The human mind was simply not built to sustain fundamental contradiction. When you willingly betray what is inherently right, your own inner compass turns hostile. That voice that once grounded them now becomes their relentless prosecutor. They try to drown it out, with constant activity, noise, or indulgence, but the subconscious always finds a way back. It whispers in the quiet hours when they're alone. It interrupts their manufactured moments of joy. It converts potential peace into inevitable unease. They might not understand it initially. They just feel restless, anxious, perpetually unsettled. But the reason is clear. Their soul remembers what their ego desperately tries to suppress. As time marches on, the sheer weight of their own choices begins to press down. This isn't usually a sudden catastrophe. It's a slow, insidious crawl. A profound sense of disconnection takes root. They can't truly trust anyone because they know the mechanics of betrayal firsthand. They can't find authentic peace because they willfully destroyed it in others. They struggle to feel genuine joy because happiness reminds them of the happiness they actively stole. Slowly but surely, their inner landscape starts to degrade. They carry a form of guilt that doesn't always scream. Often it just quietly saps their energy, day after day. That is the ultimate penalty. Being trapped with a version of yourself you can no longer respect. The mechanism of awareness has a profound way of demanding accountability. When someone chooses to do harm, the mind eventually forces a reckoning, whether the person consents or not. It might surface in dreams that jerk them awake, or in intrusive memories that shatter their focus while they attempt to act normal. Sometimes it manifests as self-sabotage. They might undermine their own success because a deep buried part of them believes they haven't earned lasting good fortune. That isn't bad luck. That's guilt taking physical shape. That's the truth forcing its way back into conscious recognition. You can suppress your conscience for a season, but it always finds a way to resurface. This internal penalty doesn't stop at mere guilt. It mutates into paralyzing shame, fear, and paranoia. They start looking over their shoulders even when no one is approaching. They become overly defensive, terrified that any scrutiny will expose the carefully constructed facade. The lies they spun become literal chains because one lie necessitates another to keep the narrative coherent. That maintenance is mentally draining. Every social exchange becomes a potential trap. Every relationship feels fragile. They begin to grasp the awful truth. They built their entire existence on unstable ground. And realizing that fact is torment. Individuals who live in this state often suffer a complete loss of identity. When you operate entirely through deception, you lose touch with your core self. The mask eventually feels permanent, but a tiny, persistent voice keeps insisting, "This isn't you." That internal conflict is maddening. They can't undo their actions, but they can't admit them without shattering their image. So they remain suspended in a psychological limbo, too proud to confess, too guilty to forget. That is the slow death of the spirit. The harder they fight this internal rot, the worse the symptoms become. Some try to chemically numb the feeling. Others chase constant distractions, new projects, new acquaintances, new ventures, anything to avoid the silence. But every temporary relief fades faster than the last. The calm they chase is always fleeting because you cannot outrun your own conscience. They try to achieve numbness, but numbness is not peace. It's merely delayed suffering. Silence, which should be restorative, turns threatening because it's the arena where truth echoes loudest. Eventually, this internal decay leaks outward. You'll see it in their eyes, tired, hollow, permanently haunted. You'll sense the erratic energy, either frantic agitation or complete exhaustion, but never true calm. Sleep becomes a battleground. They wake up burdened by the same heavy dread they tried to escape all night. Their relationships wither because guilt breeds isolation. They can't form deep, honest bonds because they know they've forfeited the right to be trusted. The walls they built to protect their deceit become their personal fortresses, trapping them inside. That is the profound justice of this existence. It doesn't always arrive with thunder and lightning. It corrodes from the core. They thought harming you would set them free, but all it did was chain them irrevocably to their actions. Every time they see someone else operating with integrity, it acts as a painful reminder of what they sacrificed. They try to mask this internal poverty with arrogance, but the emptiness bleeds through in their strained tone and their inability to relax. They'll claim indifference, but they care deeply. And worst of all, they can never reverse the damage. You can't erase a betrayal once it's done. Remember this. When you see the effects of their choices, you don't need to orchestrate revenge. You don't need to sink to their level. Life is already executing a far more precise form of justice. The critical moment is when you choose to let go of the desire for retaliation. Revenge binds you to them, trapping you in the same destructive cycle they inhabit. It forces you into a reactive posture when you should be focused on your own forward momentum. The second you cease pursuing vengeance, you reclaim your sovereignty. You stop letting their past actions govern your present emotional state. You refuse to participate in their twisted drama. And that refusal is devastating to them, because people who operate through destruction thrive on reaction. When you deny them that reaction, their power over you dissolves, and their own internal systems start to fail. Your role now is to trust the universal mechanism. Stand back and allow the consequences of their choices, the guilt, the paranoia, the slow erosion of their inner world, to play out. That is the price, and that is how you ensure you are truly victorious. By refusing to let their darkness define your light. They will try to provoke you. They'll attempt to paint you as crazy, unstable, or bitter. It's a tactic designed to keep their deceptive narrative afloat. But when you stop fighting back, when you stop offering explanations, when you cease trying to prove your character, you fundamentally alter the balance of power. They become the ones who look unhinged because truth requires no defense. It simply stands, patient and undeniable. Every contradiction in their story begins to surface on its own. The entire world starts to see through them without you ever having to lift a finger. That is the genius of this principle. Life naturally champions what is true. What most people miss is the peculiar timing of truth. It operates slowly but with perfect precision. It doesn't need to hurry. It permits individuals to use their own lies to dig their own ethical graves. It lets their games play out long enough for their deceptive mask to solidify and become their prison. They may appear to be winning for a while, but in reality, they are simply being given enough rope to completely expose themselves. When that curtain finally drops, they will have no one left to blame. Everything they constructed through manipulation will turn against them. You will not have to utter a single word. The truth will speak for itself. By allowing the law of consequence to handle the justice, you are primarily protecting your own peace of mind. You stop poisoning yourself with corrosive anger. You stop wasting vital energy on a situation that no longer deserves your focus. Think about this. When you cling to revenge, you are keeping the wrongdoer alive inside your head. You constantly relive the pain, feeding the very energy that caused you harm. But the moment you release it and confidently state, "Life will take care of this," a powerful internal shift occurs. You begin the journey of genuine healing. You transition from constantly reacting to actively rebuilding, and this healing itself becomes the most powerful justice. It is their unignorable reminder that they utterly failed to destroy you. The individuals who wronged you cannot tolerate your composure. It is deeply unsettling to them. They anticipate fury. They desire drama. They want you to chase them, argue, and unintentionally validate their skewed version of events. But when you simply rise above the noise and choose silence, you become an unyielding mirror they cannot face. Your composure exposes their chaos. Your discipline reveals their lack of internal order. That is how enduring truth fights. It endures and stands firm. And the longer it stands, the weaker and more unsustainable the lies become. There is a profound beauty in watching justice unfold naturally. You will begin to observe patterns. The same manipulation that targeted you will ruin their next relationship. The arrogance that made them feel untouchable will ultimately isolate them. The dishonesty that bought them temporary gain will strip them of all real respect. This isn't coincidence. This is the unavoidable order of things. They set this cycle in motion themselves. Your sole task while this occurs is to keep moving forward. Build your strength. Anchor yourself to your purpose. Invest all that energy you once spent thinking about them into constructing a version of yourself they can no longer touch. When you do this, their power over you instantly expires. Revenge is fleeting. Growth is eternal. When they witness you thriving in peace and realize they hold no emotional claim over you, that is a punishment far deeper than anything you could have orchestrated. Their ego cannot survive your complete, calm indifference. The ancient wisdom holds true. Evil consumes itself. Those who destroy others invariably destroy themselves because you cannot live in fundamental contradiction forever. They will face what they did. It might be through public accountability, the loss of every meaningful relationship, or a private, corrosive despair. But it is coming. You don't have to orchestrate it. Your victory is achieved not by revenge, but by becoming living proof that integrity is stronger than deceit. The greatest revenge isn't anger or retaliation. It is rebuilding yourself so completely that those who tried to break you can no longer recognize the powerful, peaceful person you've become. The real victory comes when you take all that pain, all that betrayal, and transform it into fuel for your rise. Pain, when processed correctly, becomes your most potent teacher. It strips away illusions and shows you the depth of your own resilience. The people who hurt you unknowingly forged a strength inside you they will never understand. You've already won a silent war the moment you chose to focus on your healing and move forward. You give yourself closure by simply deciding, it is over. You stop explaining your pain and start working on your future. Strength is not loud. It is consistent. Your success will ultimately expose their failure without you ever needing to try. The best payback is becoming so solid, so content, that their opinion literally cannot matter anymore. They'll have to watch you thrive, and they will know deep down that they helped create the very strength that now stands completely beyond their reach. You must trust that process. Trust that what is false will inevitably collapse. You must not interrupt the justice by becoming bitter. You used your life to rebuild your soul, and that is the kind of victory no revenge could ever match. Rebuilding yourself is not about pretending the hurt didn't happen. It is the conscious decision to use your pain as the blueprint for your resurrection. You take what they attempted to destroy and engineer something stronger, more resilient. You establish clear boundaries. You fiercely protect your inner tranquility. You stop giving endlessly to those who only take. You stop trying to explain kindness to those who perceive it as a weakness to exploit. You evolve into someone who doesn't just survive destructive people. You outgrow them entirely. They no longer fit into your sphere, not out of malice, but because your energetic frequency has simply surpassed theirs. There comes a profound point where the desire for revenge utterly dissolves, replaced by the sheer momentum of one creation. You recognize that genuine power doesn't come from forcing others to pay. It comes from constructing a life so rich and fulfilling that their memory becomes utterly irrelevant. You stop trying to prove your worth. You stop watching their movements. You stop keeping score. You become entirely focused on your own progress, peace, and purpose. That is the moment of final victory, because the purest antonym for revenge is freedom, and freedom is precisely what they never wanted you to attain. Perhaps one day they will glimpse your life again, a fleeting scroll past your name, a view of your achievements, and for a brief shattering moment, they will feel the sting of realization. The person they intended to break not only survived, but you transformed into someone untouchable. That single moment of clarity is their punishment. They will know they lost, not because you fought dirty, but because you out-evolved them. You took every wound they inflicted and converted it into wisdom. Every tear became a lesson in discipline. Every insult fueled your motivation. They are now merely a small, painful chapter that taught you the precise mechanics of how to rise. The universal truth is that life consistently favors those who choose growth over grievance. Those who cling to anger remain stagnant, endlessly reliving the same trauma. But those who commit to their own healing ultimately forge lives so rich, so deeply grounded, that the past loses all power. You don't eliminate the pain. You don't transform its meaning. You become the undeniable living evidence that no one can destroy your fundamental spirit. As you rise with integrity, the same people who once belittled you begin to unravel under their own moral weight. Life starts systematically stripping away the illusions they used as cover. The entire structure of lies, manipulations, and petty games begins to collapse. This happens not because of your action, but because it is the fundamental nature of truth. It dismantles falsehood from within. While their world descends into chaos, yours begins to expand in ways they couldn't have imagined. The contrast between your growing peace and their accelerating disorder is what finally breaks them. They cannot escape the searing realization that they destroyed something pure and real, and that truth is a wound no one can run from. Their existence becomes a living reflection of their own moral failure. The deceit they planted starts to corrupt their relationships, their reputation, and their inner core. You attract what you are. And since they operated through manipulation, they now find themselves surrounded by manipulators. Your world expands through authentic growth. You redirected your pain into productive action. They sought to ruin your reputation. You rebuilt an impeccable character. They tried to isolate you. You learned the power of standing alone. Every attempt to break you became a lesson in becoming unbreakable. You became sharper, wiser, and more disciplined. While they struggled to control appearances, you thrived by simply being real. That is the ultimate quiet power. There will come a moment when they finally grasp the depth of your peace, the strength of your confidence, and the undeniable fact that your life no longer revolves around their betrayal. That is when their punishment becomes unbearable. The loss is not simply the loss of you. It's the dawning realization that they lost themselves in the process of trying to hurt you. They sacrifice their integrity, dignity, and humanity for a fleeting, hollow satisfaction. You, meanwhile, have found meaning in the ruins. You learned that some people's destruction is their own destiny, not your responsibility. You don't need to witness their downfall to know it's occurring. You feel it in the deep, satisfying silence that now defines your spirit. Peace is the highest form of retaliation. Silence is more potent than any confrontation. Walking away with your own self-respect intact wounds them far deeper than any desperate attempt at getting even. You stop reacting, and in that cessation of engagement, you become entirely unreachable. You have evolved beyond their world. You are the living proof that no matter what anyone does, they cannot destroy your spirit. Let them see your success and your calm, not as a performance, but as the natural and inevitable result of your healing. That is your victory. That is your justice. Because in the end, nothing hurts those who wished you harm more than seeing you live beautifully and freely, without needing to hurt anyone back.